Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. It's a pleasure to be joining you today. And for the first time in a long time, we're actually coming live from our Center for Change, which is the head office of the Alliance for Change, which of course is located on Railway Embankment, just off Sharon Street. So this afternoon we have a range of representatives of the Alliance for Change here we will present on topical issues and of course answer any questions you may have. I want to start off by congratulating all the students of Guyana, all the students that sat the grade 6 assessment examinations. I know results were out a few hours ago, and we want to say congratulations to all the students. Every student is a winner. And of course, we're giving an extra shout out to those that worked hard and did extremely well. As you know, the AFC continues to be promoting the well-being and the development of our young people. And we're excited that the new phase of their high school development will now start as of September. Without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to leader of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, Member of Parliament, who has today's statement.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that members of the press have turned up to our CFC headquarters here. And the AFC press release is dealing with the shame is greater than the exoneration. The AFC notes with maximum worry the PPP's high regard for damaged goods, Mr. Nigel Dharamlal. Why senior leaders of the PPP make the claim he is still an asset remains shocking. Is it because he knows so much dirty business by his compadres who would not want to vex him to spill any beans? What these senior leaders must do is to expel him from the PPP and apologize to the victim and the entire Amerindian community for the heinous actions of this asset. No doubt the shame is greater than the exoneration, but circling the wagon around such a liability clearly does not resolve this sordid affair. It has shattered the very fabric of the state institutions concerned with investigating sexual offenses on young persons. Our modern Sexual Offences Act is made to look so primitive, much out of Jurassic Park in its application to the matter at hand. The AFC demands an internationally reputable set of experts from, say, the United Nations Human Rights Committee or the Rights of the Child Committee to be invited as urgently as possible to inquire into this debacle, one that has left so much bitterness and outrage in all Guyana. Lessons must be learned and recommendations made so as to never again allow such a crime to go unpunished. Not to commit to an inquiry of this quality will reveal what the PPP and its government has become. Thank you.
Thank you, Kemraj Ramjatan. And our next statement is going to be presented by Ricky Ramsarup, dear Narayan Ramsarup, and Ricky is also a member of Parliament.
Thank you, Kathy, and good evening to all. I want to just give a brief statement on the recent restriction of logs going to India. We have learned through a memorandum that the government of India, through its Directorate of Plant Protection, Quarantine and Storage Office, has issued a memorandum about restricting our log export to India. And I wanted to read one of the paragraphs, the first paragraph of this memorandum. As it states, this was issued in the 16th of June, sorry. At the date, we have not yet this ratified. The memorandum states that in continuation to this, the NPPO India has communicated to 194 IPPC members, including Guyana, countries, and sought their metabromide phase-out status for quarantine and pre-shipment purposes, along with a copy of relevant documents such as Gazette notification, resolution, decree, or any legal documents as evidence in response to this. Till date, 53 of the NPPO's countries have replied, excluding Guyana, their metabromide phase-out status. However, some of these countries were just replied through email without submission of desired documents, and a few of these countries have submitted their official letter without submitting a copy of their Gazette notification, resolution, decree, or legal documents for the phase-out of metabromide. The letter documents submitted by some of the NPPOs are not in English, which require translation. This is leading delay in finalization of the metabromide phase-out list of countries, due to which many import agriculture consignment and various Indian ports are held up for want of release. We have received a complaint from the companies in Guyana, and there's one company that has about 40 containers of cargoes that is being held up in the port of India. And that company has been going around from the Ministry of Agriculture to the NPPO office in Guyana to the NARI to try to get into the Guyana Forestry Commission and to the minister's office, try to get the government of Guyana to send an official gazette that's showing that Guyana has a phase-out approach to this metabromide, because it's a very dangerous substance. It is high in the CFCs, so that can deplete the ozone layer. Guyana has signed on to what we call the World Trade Organization that has that restriction, so that all the Indian government is asking for is to show the official gazette, to send to them in a hard copy, to show them that to show the approach that the government of Guyana has taken to phase out these substances. So we're very concerned, and it's been the 16th this memorandum was out. Today is the 7th of July, and the company has called to find out if there's any status. I have messaged the minister directly to tell him that there's an issue on the Indian port, and to date we have not got any feedback as to what's the hold up on this matter. But it is totally unfair to stakeholders as to run about who are doing these businesses to ensure that they are the ones facing the brunt of this issue, where they should be in the government on the priorities agenda to take this initiative to ensure that there's a free, transparent, and flow of the cargo from Guyana to India. It should not be the stakeholders that are the one who got to be taking this initiative. It has to be the government of Guyana. Those persons who sit in the office and believe that they just write a simple letter. You can simply see, you heard that on the memorandum that the Indian government is not accepting an email, but they wanted to send a hard copy of that position that Guyana has taken in terms of restricting its use of metabromide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricky Ramsru. And with that, I would like to invite members of the media to pose questions that you may have. Let me just highlight at this point in time that also at the table here answering questions, if necessary, is Executive Member of the Alliance for Change, David Patterson. So if I could open up the floor, please, as usual, identify yourself and your organization, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Anna Wilbert, Tyson News, and also representing for Guyana Standard. The PPP's General Secretary, Dr. Barjaktio, recently noted, following the LGE results, that the party is making inroads into some of the strongholds of the political opposition. And following that, you've seen certain development initiatives, like the PPP going into Yarrow Dam and laying half a new going into Sophia and all these different areas. Are you concerned about the erosion of the support base for the APNU or the AFC? And secondly, the APNU leader, Aubrey Martin, said that he's not opposed to having another marriage, another political marriage. Um, is this something that the AFC is still open to, or would you still prefer to go solo? And thirdly, uh, as you're quite aware, I'm sure, that Mr. Rafael Trotman has released a book making several revelations about the oil and gas industry. What are your thoughts on these revelations, specifically the fact that he's now looking forward to say that he is in full support, if the powers so be, of renegotiation, and the fact that even though this contract, the 2016 deal, has received a lot of criticism, he did not act alone. It had the full support of cabinet, and his superiors did not stop him if it is that they wished at that time. So your thoughts on those three matters? Would you like the fourth?
Yeah, why not? Go ahead. And we can.
The government has released the draft oil, not draft oil and gas, the draft petroleum activities law. Has the AFC made any recommendations or made any submissions on this? And what are your thoughts about the body of the draft legislation?
Okay, so maybe we can ask Mr. Ramjitan to respond to the question on the legislation and also on the coalition, maybe?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
look, on the draft petroleum bill that has been presented, we are going to give, as parliamentarians and as opposition members, our view at the debate. The PPP just loves to pull us out as to what we might want prior to the debate. But since they presented a draft in Parliament and they've asked other sections of the society for their comments, I hope that they're going to share those comments with us, parliamentarians, so that we could also be in a position to know what the general sentiment is, so that when we go into Parliament to deliberate now on the bill, we are going to be with that information furnished to us. But we are going to give our comments and our speeches on the bill when it is brought to Parliament. I hope that they're going to bring Parliament forward as quickly as possible. They've been having massive delays, but trying to give the impression that they're doing wonderful work with sending the bills and so on all over the place. It's in Parliament that we have to officially make our statement in relation to legislation that have been proposed. Okay? In relation to not being opposed to marriage, as said by the opposition leader, we too feel together we are stronger in an opposition. But of course, there are lots of things that we'll have to work out if that is to materialize. We had a Cummingsburg Accord prior to the previous elections. 2 times, I think we had. Yeah, 2 times. Mm-hmm. And to that extent, we will have to now indicate what and what other, if there are additionals, and I'm absolutely certain there will be additionals, before we enter into a coalition arrangement again. I think that is the general sentiment of opposition supporters. That's my personal view. We may have other persons in the AFC leadership who think otherwise. But at this stage, I think stronger is together, or together is stronger. And that can bring us, like we did in 2015, an election result that can see the PPP out of office. But of course, we have to talk about all those terms and conditions that is going to show equality in partnership. As to erosion of base, before.
Yeah. Actually, before we go to David, because I know David's going to deal with the local government, I wanted to add to Kemraj's comment on the quote marriage coalition politics, really. And I wanted to just say that from the formation of the AFC, we have always supported and understood the importance of alliances. It's not just by coincidence that our name includes alliances. And so the whole concept of coalition politics and alliances especially with smaller parties, non-governmental organizations, civil society, all of that was part of the vision of the AFC, and we've not done away with any of those commitments. So that's just to add to Kamaraj's
that's right.
response. And let me ask my colleague David. Sorry.
Before you move on, before you move on, Mr. Carter said that while he's into coalition politics, he's not going to be, he's not in the business of begging the party to be involved in it. Are you prepared? What is your response to that?
Well,
I think that statement could be said by any political party, any non-governmental organization, any member of civil society. We explained at the end of last year that we wanted to use this period of time to look inwards, to look at the AFC, to focus on rebuilding and expanding the AFC, and that is what we are working on. We have a very strong relationship in Parliament with the APNU, and we are open to discussion with other organizations in Guyana.
What about going alone?
It's early days still. It's early days still.
On that score, let me also say this. There is a constitutional reform process that will happen in 2024. As you would appreciate, our existing constitutional arrangement does not make it possible for us to go it alone and then at the end of the elections to have post-elections coalition, right? So if in the constitutional process, we have like what used to be in 1964, the two parties that constitute a majority can then do a coalition after the elections and become the government. If that is then provided for in the constitutional reform process, we certainly is going to go alone. But since we do not have that constitutional provision, it having been abolished sometime in 1980, if you want now to be in government, you have to join up, because in our present condition or provisionings in the Constitution, the party with the highest number of votes form the government and wins the presidency. So you can have, like in 2011, the PPP winning 49% of the votes, and they got the government. That could not have happened in 1964, because you could have joined up after the elections and form a government. So going it alone certainly will be done by the AFC if we can have a constitutional amendment again that can take us back to that scenario. If it does not take it back to that scenario, we feel that there is, under the existing regime, a perfect example of going it together to win against or to change the government. You'll have to go it together. I hope I am understood.
Thank you, Kamraj. And my colleague, David Patterson, if you could respond to the issue of local government elections and erosion of support.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Good afternoon, everyone. Just as a follow-up to that question, Starbrook News, that let you know, today AFC will be begging no one either.
Yeah,
to
right.
I mean, I don't know. I want to make it short. That's a short response to that question that you have. As a question, erosion of support based on the PPP spending, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Before local government 2023, they went on a spending spree. And I would assume that they will continue going on the spending spree, but the results doesn't reflect any sort of marginal gains for vis-a-vis what they've been doing. The Vice President Chief's he comes and he keeps changing the goalposts. You know what I mean? Elections, local government elections were announced. He said there was massive victory, 100% victory by the PPP. Did not turn out to that effect. He claimed there's only less than 30% of the persons went to the polls. Lowest ever for local government election in our history. So that shows you that people are very concerned about the direction in which the country is going. They're not as enamored or taken up with the amount of spending that the government is doing, because all the spending is hardly ever is benefiting anyone. The government just keeps announcing projects, and I like you all to take note of this. They have not completed a single project. The PP has not completed some single successful project, and I could tell you in their history. In their history, and you can see that. I mean, the Burbage Bridge, they claim that's not successful. You know, I mean, there's a court order that I put in place in 2018 that's still there, and the chairman of the Burbage Bridge, Mr. Paul Chung, who was chairman of the private sector, good comrade of the PPP, but they know the second that they remove that court order, the fares will go up in Burbage. The Marriott, you know what I mean, they're trying to get rid of it. You could think about, and they haven't completed a single project. They started off saying Skeldon, a bypass road that was supposed to be finished. They started a bypass road there, they call it John B. Lane bypass road. That's supposed to be finished in a year. That hasn't been finished. So we're not, the Demerara Harbor Bridge, 2 years, the contract was awarded in May of 2022. 2 years they said they would be completed, which means that we are already into the second year. Not a screw, not a bolt, not a single sack of cement has been poured. So they're very, very good at announcing these things. They're very, very good at doing small little things. I mean, of course, they'll be giving out the wheeling contracts and having faces of persons that are familiar looking at that not necessarily are the normal demographics. They're all their photos have those section of our community way up in front, but it doesn't translate to anything. The major jobs are going to the same persons. There's not a single community you can put your hand on that says that we're benefited. Of course, the roads, we did roads, I mean, and everything has to be done in contact. The largest budget for roads under the APNU AFC government was in 2019. This is the last budget, and that's $4.8 billion, miscellaneous roads. 2023, miscellaneous roads is $88 billion, right? This is about 20 times. And if you do a comparative of the amount of work that we did with that $4.8 billion versus what they're doing, you can see the value for money. So people are not impressed because they since the coalition, they became expectant to see roads, see development, to see better improvement. 2023, we still plagued by blackouts. We have a gas ashore project, which no one even knows if it'll ever do. So we're not worried about that. I find that other young people are not impressed with these things. The young folks are more impressed with their quality of life. Inflation is over 10%. They do nothing. The public servants, they're still eking out a meager living. Minimum wage hasn't increased since the coalition. So it's all smoke and whistle. And I think more and more the people that we have been engaged in Alliance for Change the Meaning, they're asking for much more substance. And that's always been the person that has gravitated to the Alliance for Change, who are not caught up in the what should I say, the smoke and whistles and the cosmetry of what the PPP does. And I'm sure they've been calling us. That is why one of the reasons why Cameron explained for us to do some introspection and reconnection and expansion. But they've been calling on us to do what we've done before, be more analytical, about to speak to them. And so we're not worried about that. And you have seen, and I'm sure that the last local government election has proven it, that the fact of the PPP parading former members of the coalition, I mean, it was only about 2 or 3 persons that would gone over to from the FC. But the fact that they're parading former coalition members around like prize bills or shuttles and prize possessions, it actually had the opposite effect on the population. You know what I mean? You don't do those to people. If somebody decides they're going to change political allegiance, they should do that on their own volition. None of these persons have been able to tell you why, but we know why. But they haven't brought the benefits to what the people were up there. So we're not worried at all. We know that all that once we continue our discourse with the populace, the persons that we know, because we're not a mass-based party. We've never been a mass-based party. We didn't come from a trade union like PPP or the PNC. We have a certain core group, and the last elections, local government elections, proved it to us. Highlighted some facts which you should go back and check. We, as a party, did not contest all 80 NDCs. I think we could contested with 35. But if you can see in those 35s, we gained, in almost every 35, we gained between 10 to 15% of the population, of the vote, the popular vote. So of course, the PPP will extrapolate that and say that when they do the overall, we only gain but 4 or 5% overall. But of the 35 constituencies and LDCs that we contested, we gained between 11 and 15. In Georgetown, we were 12%. And those persons, and just by low voter turnout, those persons didn't come out. So we know they're there. We know they're just waiting for us to get back there again. So I'm not worried at all.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
I missed one question.
No, just let me
Hold on.
finish up on Raphael.
Oh yes, well, that's
yes.
the one I'm
And
talking
you
about.
have to join in.
I'm gonna join.
At my inaugural budget speech in 2020,
Yeah.
as the shadow MP for oil and gas, I made this exact same statement, and I reiterated the Alliance for Change will be supportive of any renegotiation of any contract, not only oil and gas contract. There's some gold and from the extractive industries, or any contract that is to the betterment to the Guyanese people. I've said that at every single budget speech. I commend Raphael for writing and his the book. I viewed some of his revelations with some I knew quite well, right? And I'm glad that he put it out as opposed to having to come out from someone like us. Yes, he did present the draft PSA to cabinet, and there was a comparison, and you have to understand, if the PPP were in government in 2015, they would have signed the exact same contract that they had in 2014. The 1%. The 1% royalties. No, royalties, 1% royalties. That's what their contract is. That's Robert Prasad left that there. As in Raphael was indicated before, the renegotiations based on the revised PSA, and that had in 1%. Of course, the new PSA doesn't have in any percentages, which is an issue which we've raised already. And it did come to us. The question of confidentiality came to us. The question of our geopolitics was reported in the cabinet. You know, I mean, so people seem to think and you have to recall this is 2016. You have to recall that we were operating in an era when on the 26th of May, was it 2016 or 2015, the Venezuelan parliament, wasn't Maduro alone, the parliament of Venezuela issued a decree taking off the entire
economic zone.
So this is the backdrop on which that came to us. And so at that time, this came to us. in hindsight, you may say thought that we could have heard this or heard that, but we got the draft, and we said, fair enough, Mr. Trotman, we have no objections. And this is what it is.
Can I just follow up on that, please? Okay.
Go ahead.
Um, You mentioned the royalty changing from 1 to 2%.
Correct.
Is there anything you would have done differently back then? Maybe more royalties? Is there any regret? What I'm trying to know is, do you regret signing a 2% contract, accepting a 2% royalty? Do you think that we should have sought more?
Devine, in all honesty, I'm trying to explain the mindset of well, I could speak personally for myself. I mean, Camaraj and Kati were there. In, I think it was June of 2016, there was one single oil file. After, this is Lysa 1, 400 million barrels recoverable. We have been, as a country, been exploring for oil for 60, 70 years. The closest we came was in the Topical Basin. At that time, right, coupled with the geopolitics and those things like that, I mean, at that time, me personally was of the impression that I could not have foreseen, I don't know if anyone could have foreseen how lucrative this Stabroek block is going. At that time, I would have assumed that I would listen to me, that as we develop, we would tighten up on, because we do that with contracts all the time. You sign a contract, just like any employment contract, you start off as a reporter, but based on your work, you become a senior reporter, you renegotiate it based on, I mean, so forth. So at 2015, when we signed it, when it was came to us, I was just on the backdrop of Lysa 1 only.
So it was also signed with the expectation that you guys would renegotiate in the future for more?
We had always said, and I'm sure I said this on Kiana's program, Oil and Gas and You, that when we recognized when PR was coming, we had said that, listen to me, because Lysa 1 was approved, Lysa 2 was approved, we said when PR is coming up and the rate we're going, and our absorptive capacity, I think not a lot of persons are speaking about that. The oil and gas quintet has said, well, fair enough, we're going, this is what we're having. Let us, instead of running helter-skelter, we were going to approve it, but instead of approving it immediately, let us have a year pause, give the country time to catch up with the oil and gas industry. So therefore, unlike what's being done here, not that we're saying that we would never ever want to get in a situation where we're stopping our production, but we can manage it better. We have we've long exceeded our absorptive capacity, and what I mean by that is that the amount of money that we have in our economy, we can't absorb it at the moment effectively, but we just keep spending. We haven't increased our labor pool. We haven't increased our source materials. There's stone shortage. I mean, of course, we have stone quarries. I mean, so, but we're just starting more and more projects which are making demand on our very limited resources. We haven't increased our education capacity. We have a local content law which is almost a farce at the moment. You know, I mean, I like to see who's benefited. I don't know. That's one of the questions you have to ask. There's local content secretary which hasn't been set up. So we recognized in about 2018, 2019 that, whoa, this is a good thing going here. However, as a country, we'd have to manage it differently. And that's the trajectory in which we were going. Of course, I would assume that the powers that be the private sectors and those things like that probably want to just do exactly what is happening now, just pump without addressing the structural faults in our system, including the PSA, as we go forward.
Devine, it is important to also understand a couple of other things. Apart from the geopolitics of being almost at a loss in relation to how Venezuela was treating that economic zone, that we had to get somebody powerful enough to be there as quickly as possible. The geopolitics of it all must be appreciated, and I think Raphael did a wonderful job in his book explaining that. The other aspect of the matter that came up was from some experts that indicated that the world by 2025 to 2030, around that period, is going to be making electrical cars and a whole lot of things, and fossil fuels might reduce in price. So we have to take into consideration, if we are now going to give as early as possible, that we do not doom our development in view of a futuristic thing about renewable energy sources. And we also got advice from an expert called Sir Paul Collier, who came in and indicated that okay, there might be imperfections with this now that we were cribbed and confined by the model agreement of 2012, which says 1% royalty and a whole set of ring fencing and all that. So we couldn't go and start arguing, because you must appreciate that what Exxon was saying, that if we ask for too much, they are not going to go into production. They're going to leave it there and they're going to go and explore, because their exploration agreement was for 40 years. So we just had right-sized sugar. Sugar was not bringing in economic benefits. We had to get a revenue stream from somewhere. And that revenue stream came as a result of this. And with that cribbing and confining of the government as a result of the 2012 model agreement. And I remember we were trying to ask who did this model agreement that now, in a sense, ensure benefits to Exxon and deficits to our government. We understand that it was done by Bar Jagdeo and Robert Prasad. Are we trying to get them? Please come and say, what was this, what you did here? You can't get them.
They also claimed that it was shared widely, if you can recall.
Yes.
If you look at it, it was widely shared among all.
And that 2012 agreement was never shared, never put in Parliament, nowhere. But now the Exxon brought it and said, well, this is what, had we gotten it under the administration of the PPP, this is what we had arranged for. So we were caught, and that is why people must appreciate that to get 2% royalty as against this powerful transnational company, ExxonMobil, one of the most powerful, we did okay. And that was when we had gotten, I think, not 400 million, but 4 billion?
400 million.
400 million. That was, but there's massive changed circumstances. Yeah. We today got 11 billion. I have personally gone out and on behalf as leader of the Alliance for Change, say that we must enter renegotiations, especially in the context that Jagdeo and all of them put it inside of the PPP manifesto, that they're going to do that. And they said it was a rotten deal. Yeah. But a lot of people must understand, we had to make a judgment call in those stringent circumstances at that point in time. It's like a judge. The judge hearing the evidence and the parties at that time make a judgment. We could say, well, the judge gave too little bit damages at that point in time. Yes, but that was when we had to make the decision. And what we could do now, as we have said, we could renegotiate a better deal. And that is what Raphael also wrote in his book, that when he did this agreement, fully supportive by all the other cabinet members, it was also in the contract that it was not written in stone. It could be renegotiated. But this PPP government, calling it a rotten deal then, and now saying that it is probably the best deal ever. They don't want to renegotiate, breaching their manifesto promises, and also doing a bad thing that Glenn Lal has been talking about, your newspaper owner. Big thing, it is bad. And he's right about it. So it is important that people understand that the AFC always wanted renegotiation. Raphael has supported it. I have done so. Almost everybody has done so.
Mm-hmm. And it was written into the contract because we had asked. And I think it's clause 34, something like that.
I just wanted to clarify something I heard from Mr. Rambutan, you said that during the negotiations, when the coalition was trying to press for more benefits, Exxon was trying to say, if you try to ask for too much, we will leave.
Literally, that is how we understood our negotiators to be telling the cabinet members that it was obviously that is what they're going to do. Just leave it like that in the ground and proceed to go and explore at other places, Payara and I don't know where else and so on. And so we had to make a decision.
If I may,
Yeah.
So I just want to add a different.
Go ahead.
Perspective. We keep talking about the future benefit that we should have as a country, and we have no doubt about that we can have more. But what we have, we are not spending it in the right manner, as David was trying to say. We're going to spending spree. We are not putting the economic sustainability of this finance that we got, the levies and the little that we got. We are not doing that. There is no investment. Where is our money been invested? What the investment committee that was supposed to set up on the Natural Resources Act? Where is that investment? What are they investing our money in for our future generation? It's been 2016 to now. There's no school, oil and gas school set up technically to train our people in Guyana to take over this oil and gas, as other countries like Ugandans who did, like Norwegian did. Norwegian have their spending, they have their money that's been invested in several big companies around the world, where that money is always coming back to their country, and they have over 3 generations of money secure for the people. Where's ours? So the little that we got here is not being spending properly. It is not being managed properly. And the Guyana, when the AP and UFC government signed this deal, it is one of the best deals or the best happened to this country because of the revenue stream. If you look at the other revenue stream now and compare to oil and gas, which we'll be doing in our next budget coming up, you will see exactly those performance of those non-oil sector versus the oil sector. And you will understand the position what Guyana would have been at if the oil was not
If we didn't sign that
agreement. And that is what we want our Guyanese people to understand. Thank you very much.
I think when you, in concluding, the issue is that given where we are now, given the fact that the AFC more than 3 years ago said that they would support renegotiation, the fact, as you mentioned today, the leader of the opposition has said the same thing. Our expectation was that as a nation, we would have been able to take a position that all the key stakeholders, all the key political entities agree that this contract should be renegotiated. And we could have gone, and we still can go, with one unified position and demand that it be renegotiated. I mean, we know just from our day-to-day existence, the circumstances yesterday are never the same as they are today. Our expectation was that future PSAs, future contracts would have been handled differently given the wealth of information and the passage of time. As we have as Guyanese a united stand on our border issue, we as a political party expected that we could have taken a united stand on the renegotiation of this contract. Any other questions on any areas?
I have one more question.
Sure.
Mr. Cameron, been in contact with the girls, the alleged. You said you tried to, try to give legal counsel to the girl. What is your interaction with the girl?
No, well, that night of the 20th of June, the mother called me to be there as an independent legal advisor to the girl. She also wanted legal advice, and she had communicated to her mom, and her mom asked me. I understand the father had asked Dexter Todd. I then went the following day to ensure that I could see the girl. I did not. I was denied access to the child on a ground that I now know was fallacious. They told me that there is a protocol that independent lawyers can't represent child victims. It's a total lie, because I have it here, the document, the protocol. And the protocol also indicated that what is in the best interest of the child must be the basis used for the forensic interview. And what could be better than having an independent advisor for the child? But they didn't want me, and then the child actually was not there in Commoner Street. They had the child someplace called Blossom. I don't know where the Blossom.
No, Blossom headquarters. Yeah.
The Blossom
is a
headquarters.
group.
So that is what I was being told by the mom. I was even denied access when the brother of the child was giving a forensic interview. Now, that brother was not in protective custody. But although the mother asked that I be there that morning at Commoner Street, they denied me even to see the interviewing or the forensic interview of that child. Now, I was in contact with the mother for 2 or 3 days after, and right now, frankly, there hasn't been any communication at all. And I have tried to get communication. I've gotten her number, but there's no answer.
And from your understanding, the president of the British fact that the system not work. To your understanding as a legal personnel, what it means for the system going forward?
Come on. As I just read out in a statement here, all the state institutions have bungled in relation to this matter. It is a debacle. How could it be that the process worked? What process? That, you know what is working? Our police force coming out with statement that the girl retract her allegations, or the girl don't want no further action. Why the police don't tell me what it is that the girl said that the minister did to him, to her? That is what they should say. But we got a police force, a superintendent there, that run quickly to the press. Girl give retraction statement taken in executive. And after the girl give cogent, compelling, convincing evidence in the statements after she was taken into protective custody, which statements are the basis for any rape charge and sodomy charge and sexual grooming charge and all of that, we heard that more statements were wanted. For what? Obviously, there was some complicity from some places, to put pressure on the girl to make that same conclusion that we all arrived at, no further action to be taken. And that is to say that the process worked. Let the police tell us, because I have now gotten the statements that she made as to what the minister did to her. It was whistleblown. And that is what makes my call for United Nations Human Rights Child Experts should come. When we were passing the Sexual Offences Act of 2010, they bring out an expert.
Yeah.
They brought the experts to come and show us what and how to explain it and all of that to us. Why they don't bring the expert now so that they could do a review of this debacle? Let them bring those experts here. No. We would like the government to do that. If the government doesn't do that, we will have to do that.
But why can't man?
Is what?
Are you waiting on the government to call on this UN body to investigate its own PPP member?
Well, generally,
System.
these international institutions would want governments to call on them to do that. And that is why I say it will reveal what the PPP is if it does not call. But we certainly going to take it up and also probably ask for a review of or judicially review the DPP's position on the matter.
Devine, it's quite difficult, and I want to remind you about the Henry boys, when those two young men were brutally killed. I think that their attorney at that time, Niger Hughes, had gotten a foreign company, forensic pathologists
Yep.
out of Argentina to come, and they were unable to work because they weren't invited by the government.
Yeah.
So our, as Cameron is saying, our push now is to try and well use
Get the government to invite.
whatever resources. I mean, even if go and see if we get the government to officially invite. If they're claiming, as they are, that the system has worked, they have no problem in putting it on the microscope and having it reviewed. So that's it. We will if they don't, we will of course continue trying to get independence. But that is the little difficulty you have with UN and those places coming operating invited by individuals.
In normal societies, the government of the day would want to be able to guarantee almost that were the same circumstances to emerge again, today, tomorrow, next week, that if the system and the institutions erred, that next time around, a better job would be done. And that is why the onus is on the government to ensure that the procedures undertaken by the Child Protection Services, the police force, and all the other entities that were involved in this situation are examined by an independent group, and determination where we fell down, recommendations put on the table, implemented. The question that we should be asking is, if the exact same situation, if tomorrow some other girl reports a similar situation with another individual, and we've heard of other stories similar, are we as a country in a better position to defend the rights of the victim? And at the end of the day, if you look at the Sexual Offences Act, where it specifically talks about ensuring that a victim doesn't have to regurgitate over and over and over what took place, how is it possible that you don't record the first time, the first statement, but the exit statement you're boasting that you recorded? Does that make sense? And on the day that she decides no further action, supposedly the third organization had come in for her to repeat again what took place 3 times in one day. That cannot be acceptable. And for us to keep looking and thinking that the government is not responsible for fixing this is not good enough. We have to demand that they fix it. Yeah, go.
All right, so firstly, what is the AFC's position on the amount of loans, peaceful loans we've been hearing about government taking from these huge development partners, countries, financial institutions, etc.? I believe we reported just recently that our loans this year is going to increase 6 times more than last year. How does the party feel about this? I have a few other questions. Would you like to say one here?
Yeah, Juretta, you ought to be here as our finance person.
Well, we can.
Yeah. I can say absolutely. We are appalled at it, because obviously with we are going to get from our natural resources fund in 2023 $1,029,000,000. That's how much we, based on the formula that the government has put out, that's how much we're going to get. And this is interest-free, loan-free, free to be spent on anything that we want, hopefully. So there's no need for this. But however, we here have a theory that obviously when you borrow these monies and those things like that, I mean, and they're borrowing for projects that they're not even in their manifesto. I mean, it's not even in their manifesto. You have to, as a country, you have to start looking at it. They never thought about these things before. They came in, they have access to the Natural Resource Fund, and they started borrowing. And they're borrowing from some strange places as well. We've never borrowed so much money from some of these places. Saudi Arabia. We there's the Islamic Development Fund. Now we've gone to countries. The Islamic Development Fund Bank made available in 2018 $900 million US as Honorable Minister Jordan. That's what we were going to use primarily to fix our electricity sector, our power sector. We haven't even exhausted that. We've gone to Saudi Arabia, we've gone to some other strange persons when we have an envelope at discretionary rates. So you have to wonder why. Of course, the theory is obviously it's all not the borrowing, the use of all the money they want to, because our Public Procurement Commission is non-existent almost. So they have full access to $1 billion US from the National Resource Fund with very little oversight. Every day you read papers, I mean, you hear plant shop people getting $1.1 billion of contracts and those things like that. And that's where the corruption, I mean, of course, that's where the corruption happens. So the money that they're using on the Natural Resource Fund is like a slush fund. And then the developmental work they're claiming they have to use with these loans. The Public Procurement Commission, which is supposed to be our safeguard against this wanton spending, haven't launched a single investigation. July 1st is a year. They haven't even launched a single investigation. I've written to them on several contracts which are suspicious, you know. Statement 8, talking about projects that they haven't even completed. I mean, Dalip being blacklisted by the same Public Commission. You have BM Sot property. They've just won $786 million US Guyana dollars to rebuild Christchurch. No history at all whatsoever of and it's in Kaichur News and Starbuck News and all the papers. That alone should raise flags in this country when things like that. But that's what they're doing. So there's no need whatsoever for us to be borrowing the money. But of course, they want to squander it away and corrupt practice the money that we have in natural resource money. And to fill the gap, that's why they're going to borrow.
The other important aspect, of course, is the stability of the cost of oil. And the reality is that more than a little over a year ago, remember the price had dropped per barrel of oil.
2020.
If you look back in history, we've had periods in our history where we've had an oil crisis, where the rate fluctuates down and also up. So the fact that we are borrowing excessive amounts without understanding or knowing what the price is going to be in another 2, 3, 10 years, especially also when you consider that the world is moving towards renewable energy. Right. And the US government, as you know, denied loan funding to one of our local companies because they say their focus is renewable energy. So those are the realities.
So where does that leave citizens?
Well,
in a very difficult spot, a very worrying situation.
The whole point of it is that we have to learn to live within our means. And if our means right now, in view of the fact that we would have collected about 3.2 billion US dollars, we got to live within our means.
Yeah.
But they want, in addition to this $3.2 billion, to borrow, and they have borrowed about $2 billion in this 3-year period, or more than that, makes nonsense of a balanced budget, as it were. When you borrow, you also make the future generation start becoming indebted and they ain't even born yet. That is also the repercussion of excessive borrowing. But as Jagdev indicated, that 1 year we could pay off the debts that we owe. But he doesn't understand, as Kathy just mentioned, that 1 year the oil could go down to $36 per barrel. Mm-hmm. And then what happens to our children? And that is why I do not understand Bharat economics. And it is going to doom our development. Because he's basically in charge of the government in relation to that. And he wants, that is probably why he's in charge because he would want it. And of course, the benefits of spending so much money, loans and all of that, got big corruption behind it.
Yeah.
Anand Gulsaran has been saying that. So many other people in the country have been saying that, and we have been seeing that. Substandard work for big contracts and all of that.
I know you have other questions, so
No, I just want to remind you, it's a year now since we haven't been able to find Sue.
Oh, yes.
And Sue made his money was Sue's deal was a commission for his boss of all these loans. Every loan you have, it's called commission, right? There's a commissioning fee. So every loan that you take, the person that brokers the loan and so forth, the Sue's, gets 5 or 10% of that right away for his boss. Sue was disappeared, miraculously disappeared off the face of the earth. But I'm sure if it's not Sue, there's a Kwan or a Hajab or somebody like that working as well. And so Sue is just a name, one name we found through Vice News, but that is another angle in which you can get with loans.
Okay, I just wanted to follow up right beyond the goal as well. President Ali has said repeatedly that Guyana has been borrowing at low interest rates and at fixed rates to instead of varying mortgages. Does this justify the amount of loans that we've been taking recently?
No, absolutely not.
I think we answered that.
But let's put it because
Capacity to
let me put it
spend.
there because obviously every single person knows that if you take your $100,000 you put in the bank, you get they give you what 0.75%. So that's what our money is at the national thing. And you go back now, you want to borrow from the bank, that same on they give it, even if it's a low percentage, more money than we make, that more higher interest than we're getting for the money deposited.
Yeah.
If we already have the money there.
What kind of economics is that?
That's not. I mean, they only say these things to distract from the poor economic planning.
Right. On the audit process for ExxonMobil, we are yet to complete any audits from Exxon, and it's billions of US dollars here to see. We haven't been hearing from the EFC on this. Are you comfortable with the fact that we have not yet, Guyana's not yet been able to complete any of these hearings?
Davina, I tell you this here. So, I mean, because just about a week or two ago, I was drafting a follow-up because in January, if you can recall, I think I would have shared it with the public. I would have asked a question and notice in Parliament, and we were told that the first report would have been here in March of this year. The very first one that was done, the same FS report would be done in March, and it's that's official what he's told Parliament. So I've already said to myself I have to write a follow-up question for them. Pardon?
2024 probably.
Yeah, yes, no, oh yes, right. He didn't say the year, and then of course we had the other $9.6 billion done by the local consortium. Absolutely nothing. So we are not worried, and we are very, very worried about the lack of things. We also want to be able to see the report compared to the leaked one from HFS. I think the leaked one from the firm from England. We want to compare what we're going to be getting versus what was initially there. I mean, and because I found that initial report was very detailed. It not only go into the nuts and bolts. It shows that the oil company owed us $251 million. Of course, the government and surprisingly, I'm quite surprised the GRA followed them along because this is probably the first inland revenue authority in the world that never said yes, give me the money. The IRS would never ever, I would think in the States, ever say to that a call for money is not correct.
For good.
Right, yeah, they want their money. But we're waiting to see, I'm waiting eagerly to see. So I will be asking, as the camera said, we don't know if Parliament will ever be called again. The short one-member Parliament, and obviously they have serious internal problems at the moment. But we are waiting. But I will ensure though before before the week out, I'll ask a follow-up question on it. If
Davina,
the speaker will allow me, he's very, very diligent.
Davina, I'll be the cynic in the AFC. And I'll say that we could write all the press statements. We can post on Facebook Live. We can hold press conferences as we've done. We can write to the international community,
As we've
international
done.
agencies. We could say, been there, done that. But at what stage, at what time do Guyanese demand that the government they supposedly put in there begin to serve them and answer their questions? Although how can we hold government to account when we ask questions in the millions of methods I've just outlined, and then we go to the parliament and we ask questions in the parliament, and the questions are not allowed, the motions are not allowed? We have been saying this for well over a year. It's almost as if the population, the country, doesn't understand what we are saying. If we don't have access to the information, if this government does not operate the same way we operated, and let me be very specific on that. We ensured that the opposition, the PPP, when they were in opposition, could meet once a month with ExxonMobil. So as an opposition, they met, they asked any questions. We wanted them to be part of the information change and knowing transparency, accountability, and knowing where the development of this industry was going. We are not afforded that opportunity. The parliament does not work. So what is the next step? We will continue to talk, but all of us know that at the end of the day, oh God, is the opposition saying the same thing? Don't take notice, opposition. Well, all I will say is that I think there will come a time when the people of Guyana will realize that the institutions are not working for them. And in other countries, when that happens, you end up with what's happening in France.
Yemen.
You end up in what's happening in Yemen and many other places of the world. Let's leave it there.
On the issue of audits as well, given the amount of time and length of time it's taking for us to complete this process, does the party believe that our draft bylaw should seek to put measures in place for us to get this thing done in a more timely manner, and maybe even implement penalties for the country failing to get this thing done in a timely manner?
You're absolutely correct. Cameron responded to our drafts and those things like that. I am sure that when it comes up, not only will we, Cameron has indicated we would speak of it in Parliament. I'm sure that I'm seeking to put in amendments, suggestions because obviously, let's be honest, it's a farce sending anything to, I know APN, you sent it to the media, it's a farce sending anything to the PPP, right? They can take it in, they can disregard it. First and foremost, they absolutely have no regard for the entire country by giving you just 2 weeks. They have taken 3 years to develop this new draft, whatever PSA that they have. And then they throw it out and the embarrassed says, oh, you got 2 weeks to review it. And if you don't review it, you have nothing to say. Well, that's it. I can't use that word because I think we're going live. So we've decided, not only speak in Parliament, we will also put in our amendments. And in our amendments, Davina, we're looking at things like ring fencing, fixed royalties, Petroleum Commission, auditing, local ownership, future actions, insurance coverages, you know what I mean? So those are all the areas in which we're looking to put in amendments. So that is in response. Not only will we speak on it in the bill, we will put in amendments, and we will force the PPP to either accept them, or because right now if we submit it, there's no right and there's no obligation for them to respond. When we put in our amendments, we will force them to let the nation know exactly where they stand on these matters. They will have to vote against it as a government. So it shall be in the records that we stood on the side of the people, and they stood on the side of the
Themselves.
the oil and gas person. That is why, as a approach, we are taking a line to change. So we're not, I know people keeping, you haven't said anything, we're not saying anything. The time for speaking is coming, not
That is,
to
it's
them.
Parliament we
In
debate
Parliament.
these things.
Yeah.
Because I've heard the VP already started making comments on AP and news public session. He will have to be there in Parliament to make those comments, and then his party, each one of the 33 persons there will have to vote. And if they vote, and they have an opportunity to write everything that we find is wrong. If they vote for no fixed penalties for auditing, if they vote for no Petroleum Commission, no fixed royalties and those things like that, whatever happens in the future until the government is changed, is on their head.
Divina, how is it possible that you could meet over budget period, examining the estimates for close to 3 weeks, all kinds of recommendations and presentations in nearly 65 people, and you have not taken one occasion, one recommendation from anyone in the opposition? In all those speeches that are full of recommendations, you've never once given the media the opportunity to say, guess what? We're happy to report that Mr. X, Y, and Z from the opposition made these recommendations. And as Minister of Finance, I think they were good recommendations. We've asked to meet with them to examine fully how we might be able to accommodate some of those recommendations in the best interest of Guyana. Never has that taken place. And what was absolutely ludicrous was the last time when the leader of the opposition had a list of, I think, 27 recommendations.
Yeah.
And the first thing out of the minister in closing the debate was, why can't we hear any recommendations? When he went down recommendation 1, recommendation 2, recommendation 16, 17. Again, I leave it there. But I know you have questions. We're winding up. I do want to ask if there are any other members of the media that have any other closing questions, and then I'll quickly answer your 1 or 2. We're kind of out of time.
Starbuck, you have anything?
Okay, so Kiana, go ahead, and then one more from Divina.
Thank you. On the question of parliamentary scrutiny, I was wondering if there would be any approach to trying to get from government a report that seeks to understand the expenses or the forecast of what is to be expended by ExxonMobil in the Stabro block, so that you parliamentarians as well as the country can have an idea of how much is being recovered or is expected to be recovered, because that's one of the sort of black areas or opaque areas that we see. There isn't any much reporting from government regarding the cost to be expected.
Projected costs, yeah.
So on that, and then finally, on the legislation, we've seen, well, compared to your time, the legislation, yes, it was old, but the sector was still in the nascent stage. And it's now compared, we now have 11 billion barrels, scores of discoveries, and the development is taking place at a really accelerated pace. How does it worry you, and what are your thoughts on us running an industry with an archaic piece of legislation still in place? What type of danger do you think we're playing with in having an industry move at such a pace, breakneck speed, but we have no modernized legislation based on modernized tools? I know that the effort is being made now, but so much is already happening. So those are my 2 questions.
Well, on the first one on the legislation, I probably will let Kamraj give a thing on because there is this.
Oh, I'm sorry, just do you think in the absence of the modernized legislation, there's anything that the government is still being able to manage well? Do you see any positive?
Yes, they can manage administratively.
Well,
Because, look, we had a modern legislation in the 2010 Sexual Offences Act. But look how primitive it was applied in the case of this recent debacle. So you can have all the most beautiful, elegant laws that you want in a country. If there isn't the political will to ensure that it runs by the letter and the spirit of that modern piece of legislation, all comes back to zero. So there must be capacities built in relation to the personnel that will have to manage it. And right now, although we have archaic laws, we can say administratively, this is what we demand. We can demand things by virtue of executive. That is how Mr. Biden is running sometimes when he doesn't have the legislation passed in Congress and in Senate. By executive order. Barack Obama taught us that. By executive order, you could do it. But what we have is a government whose executive order is literally in an incestuous relationship with Exxon. And that is what will make it difficult. Plus, they didn't bring in the modern legislation quick enough. But then again, even if you get modern legislation and you apply it to the case at hand, you can end up just like what we had in the recent debacle. So modern legislation does not necessarily mean translate into
another good example in which I think that both Kiteshore News and Starbrook News has been on about is the Environmental Protection Agency. That's almost encompassing in its breadth. I mean, I haven't heard anybody asked us to review or update the EPA's Act because almost everything is there. Unfortunately, it's how you enforce it. You know, I mean, the EPA is almost a rubber stamp. Well, not almost. There's a rubber stamp for the government. You know what I mean. And that is one of the safeguards you have. I mean, you may have not so strong legislation on the petroleum extractive industry, but if you have a really effective, like Dr. Vince Adams had an EPA. That also helps.
Like a Vince Adams
EPA. That help counteract some of the issues that we're having here now. So not just the modern legislation, because you can have the best legislation. Another example is the local content passed in much, grandiose. Some of her parliamentarians were banned. I mean, they made a lot about it in 2021, not 2022. 2021. Have you done an assessment on how it is? I mean, they're coming back again to try and cover the loopholes, which we told them. I personally brought 11 amendments. Yep. We told them that there would be a problem when you just put, if you don't make a definition of who's a Guyanese citizen.
Yeah.
A Guyanese. You know what I mean? Because a rented citizen is being around, you go and find a destitute man and he gets his ID. He says, sign this paper, I'll give you some chewing gum, and he'll do it. And then you open the country, you own 51%. Is just the thing. I mean, we spoke about several of the issues that they're having now. We spoke about the issues of CARICOM. They tell us how we mad, and they wrote loads of letters and those things like that. They still have these challenges. I mean, I spoke about the no contract should be in my amendment. No contract should be awarded by the oil and gas sector that should be exceed 3 years. The reason is they can claim we have no one now, but in 3 years' time that allows us to build capacity. That's one of the amendments we have. The oil and gas sectors are giving 10-year contracts to people, which means that even if we build a capacity in 10 years' time, I have to wait 10 years' time to bid. In one of the amendments we spoke about debunching. Of course, I mean the private sector and them they criticized the opposition. I can remember the chairman of the Georgetown Association on Facebook criticizing us for opposing any the local content act on his Facebook page. Who I'm a friend of mine too, I think. But they come to realize that this is what these big companies do. That's what persons told us. We would have met with the Ghanaians when I was in office, and they said this is what they do. You can have local content, but if they bunch all logistics, and maybe they do logistics for the whole country, even though you may have a sector that is strong, they bunch it, and then of course you can't qualify. But when they're now coming to realize that. So the modern legislation, that's 2 years old, not even 2 years old, it's ineffective. Finally, projected costs. And I shouldn't be the one talking about it, probably ask Ricky to do the thing. The Parliamentary Committee of Natural Resources, after 3 years, have been reconstituted a month ago. Unfortunately, I let them think. Unfortunately, Parliament goes into recess next month on August the 10th, so we'll have to wait. But I'm sure one of the areas that they would have, and one of the agencies that they would have, he would have to tell you better, would be Exxon and oil and gas and those things. One of the things that committee will be looking at. So
And
either
last week, our meeting, because I sit on that committee also, last week our meeting was cancelled. The minister in charge was not available, and we specifically asked. There are other representatives on the committee from the PPP.
They're alternates.
Why couldn't, and they're alternates.
They're
Why
alternates.
couldn't the meeting still continue?
No, minister got to be there.
So Kian, we have set up a work program where we have to bring these companies into Parliament so that we can, get a status report and ask these kind of safe questions. Can you present to us your expenditure for, let's say, 2024? When we present this work plan, we had the timeline and everybody had the input of recommendation to submit it to the chairman of that committee. We, on our side, we submitted a work program. There was none from the other side.
The government side.
The government side. There was none from the government side that submitted. In our work program, Exxon is one of the companies that we put there to come to the Parliament so that we can question the company. There are other companies too. There are companies in forestry, a company in gold mining, there are companies in the sand and quarry mining. So we put a whole work program out there.
You have the oil and gas.
Oil and gas. And we also have the government institution also on that work program, because we have to see if the administrative are functioning properly, if they're moving with those rules and regulations of those agencies. You know what we were told by the member of the government? That our work program is biased. That we are focusing only on the GGMC and not focus on the other sector. So I kind of shocked and I had to step back, because when you looked at the GGMC, they controlling the oil and gas, the petroleum, the sand and mine, the gold, the diamond bauxite, all the resources. Only forestry is the one that is outstanding. And saying that our program is biased. So I said, can you provide to us some recommendations? I'm saying that our program is biased. These are the attitude and behavior of senior government officials who want to come to Parliament to make policies and decisions for our Guyanese citizens. Coming with an attitude like that. We are not saying that you should not, we didn't refuse his recommendations. You had an opportunity to provide a recommendation to the chairman of that committee. And we go over and over on this issue. And I said, we said in the decision, we said, okay, you know what? We're going to bring up the logging companies forward. We can put the oil companies after when we come back on recession. Let us bring Wrong and Company Inc., which is privately owned by Sue. Right? It is not that we're saying, but I don't think, they think they're just coming. My suspicion is that they're coming and delay this whole.
It's scrutiny that they want to delay.
You understand? And as Kathy says, that the last one was postponed because of the absent there. But there are other people we're asking, there are other government agencies that can come.
Just like the Public Accounts Committee.
Next step?
And I will also bring, they do not want scrutiny in the Public Security Committee. Remember in the last coalition government, they wanted, by the way, that is an in-camera committee because it's a lot of official security matters that we deal with. In my administration, they want it right away. Public Security Committee of Parliament must meet and so on, and we convene and they call on the commissioner to come and they laced him with questions. They called on the fire chief, gentle, laced him with questions, what you got to do, this and that, and what. They did that to Courtney Samuels. What you got to do now in the Natural Resource Commission is to call up Exxon, just like the projected expenditures, and directly ask Exxon, what is your projected expenditures? So we will get it from the horse's mouth. But we got a government that set the people in that Natural Resource Committee now. Oh, we too much with Geology and Mines Commission. They are delaying deliberately the scrutiny that the reform process of 2002 process created all these committees from happening. And that is what we would like reporters to ask of them. Because you're asking the opposition, what is the projected spending? We would get it from the horse's mouth when we put up our work program on September the 8th. Exxon officials must come to this parliament. Just like how they have to go to a Congress committee or a congressional committee or a senatorial committee in America. Yeah. That is what we want here. But no, says the government minister. This work program, don't bother with this, it's sure to me.
So, we know transparency. And
there is no transparency here anymore. It's what they call elective despotism.
We are out of time. Davina, I do want to say, if you have any other questions, please forward them to me, and I'll be more than happy to share them with the persons that can answer. Is that acceptable? Great. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming and to wish you a safe weekend. Today is Friday, right?
Yeah.
And again, we close off by remembering all those young guys that did so well, and we say, we wish everybody the best. We also want to thank especially the teachers and the parents who work long hours to ensure the success that all our children have received. And again, thank you very much.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Next week.
I think it's another.